Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kamal Pant, the principal of IHM Pusa, and it is a pleasure for me to present Mr. Himmat Anand, one of the most illustrious alumnus of IHM Pusa, to you. And as you are aware that this series comes to you with the active support of the PUSA IHM Alumni Association and the current executive committee, who are very active in this particular area, and proactively they are reaching out to our alumni and bringing in the wisdom to this table. So, not taking a lot of time, I would like to welcome the president of the PUSA Alumni Association, Mr. Arindam Kunar, with a request to kindly introduce Mr. Himmat Anand, map his journey ever since he graduated from this institute and the kind of contribution he has made to the hospitality industry in our country. So, President of PIMA, Mr. Arindam Kunar.
Thank you, Mr. Pant. Deeply appreciative of your support and the support of the faculty and students for supporting us in this journey. Very pleased and I would say proud to have Mr. Anand speak to us today. First of all, it's very difficult to introduce Mr. Anand because I don't know of anybody in the industry who doesn't know Mr. Anand, whether he is a newbie in a student in the college or somebody who's been in the industry like the time that some of us have. Having said that, I must do my duty to introduce him. But a lot of people probably don't know that he started his career in Taj, because for most of us, we have known him during the Kuoni and Sita days. But he did have a little bit of an industry exposure in hotels with Taj. And by his own submission, he says that was not his cup of tea, pun intended, I think. So he spent a lot of time in Sita. And of course, we all, from the genre that we come from, we know there were only two big companies, travel companies of those days. And Sita was one of them. And he had 10 years stint in Europe between Frankfurt, Paris, and London. So I think what we're going to hear from him today is not just his experiences in the hotel industry or the travel industry, but also a very in-depth knowledge about how the world operates in the hospitality business. He, of course, reached the pinnacle in terms of his career accomplishment, the Chief Operating Officer for India and South Asia for Kuoni Destination Management. And we all know that Kuoni was one of the companies which acquired many companies and combined many companies. So to that effect, Mr. Anand was at the helm of affairs of this entire transition, which was a tectonic shift, in my view, during the during India's sort of travel trade history. But I think his most accomplished or his most satisfying accomplishment, I would imagine, and we will hear about it, would be the launch of his own experiential brand of hotels called the Tree of Life. I read somewhere in one of the magazines, he says that's what he always wanted to do from a passion perspective. And now he operates 8 boutique properties across the country. Of course, he also launched the Dog Story in October 2019, the first one in Jaipur. And that's again a very unique accomplishment and a way of life. But I think it's also because of Jugnu, who seems to be his best friend wherever he goes, at least if I judge from the Facebook posts that he puts. But what distinguishes Mr. Anand is his ability to shoot straight from the hip, his ability to speak the truth. And I guess with so much of accomplishment behind him, he can afford to do it. But he really has the courage and the conviction to speak his mind, which is probably what is most endearing to the people who love him for who he is. And I know that most of you are not here to hear me, and therefore I will stop at that. I could go on and on about Mr. Anand, but 78 batch from Pune, and we are happy to have one of his batchmates, Colonel Mandla, on the call as well today. So over to you, Mr. Anand, but really deeply appreciative of your time. I know you're a very busy man, especially during these times of hotel opening and ramping up, but we deeply appreciate and we'd love to hear from you.
Arindam, thank you very much for this amazing introduction. I think you've put me on a pedestal which is very, very high, and I hope I can do justice to where you've placed me. So good morning to all you youngsters out there. Mr. Pant, wonderful to connect with you, and thank you for this amazing opportunity. 78 is, when I think of 78, I actually start feeling old. And that's the reason why I never ever want to tell anybody when I passed out from college. Because that puts, and all of you who are listening to me, I think we're not even born in that era. I think you're all 90s born, I guess. Yeah, I would put it middle 90s to probably late 90s is when most of you were born who are students there today, which actually puts you in another generation to me, right? It's actually one generation is the gap between us. And I must admit that I am extremely jealous of your generation. I love the carefree life which you lead. I love the clarity of your thought which your generation has. I love the fact that you're not emotionally attached to too many things. You can detach yourselves very quickly. You are extremely tech savvy. You're willing to take many more risks than my generation took. And I thought I was a risk taker, but when I see the youngsters who are in their 25s and in their 30s taking the risks they take, I really pale in front of that. So yeah, that's the great part about your generation. And many of you have left the safety of your homes. You're now in college, and you will soon leave the safety of your college to face the real world. And I must tell you, the real world is a very vicious place to be in. It is actually survival of the fittest. There is deceit. So I'm not saying all is bad, but I think the world which you have grown up in the last 5, 7, 10, 15 years, when you come out to the real world, please be ready for the shock which you will get, because that is the reality of life. And I think the COVID situation has probably made the world, I don't know, I think a more strained place to live in. This is not to scare you people, but this is just to give you a real reality, to show you the mirror that that is what the real world is all about. Now, this session is not about Gyan. You know, honestly, I don't like being the Gyani. I'm very active on social media and I get a lot of Gyanis on Facebook. So I sort of avoid becoming a Gyani when I can. So this is not about Gyan. This is about to share real life experiences with you and try and see what you can pick from that. Because the only thing I have above you guys is the number of years I've been around. That's honestly the only thing I have. And each of you, as you come out, will make your own path, will make your own success stories, and you would then one day be giving interactions like these. So let me very quickly just go back to my college days. I mean, 75 to 78, 3 years, I must admit, were the best years, and I think of those years still very fondly. I'm sure a lot has changed since 30, 35 years out from there and more. I would imagine a lot has changed in that. But I was a hostler. I spent 3 years in the hostel. So I don't know how many of you listening to me are hostlers, but I think we had some amazing times. We made some amazing buddies. We did things which were crazy. For us at that time, the peak of being romantic was sitting in the balcony opposite the girls' hostel, and your room ka light was going on and off, on and off. That was romanticism of our times. I'm sure you guys have progressed much more than we were, but our generation was like that. We were very low key. I was also the proctor of my floor. We had proctors in those days. So my job was to take attendance. My job was to make sure lights out was at the time. And I also had the privilege, I remember, of being in charge. In the dining hall, there used to be a music system. And Ravi will remember those days when we had vinyl records over there. And the keys to that music system was in my hand. And I was responsible for playing whichever music I wanted to. So I was really the preferred guy because people keep coming to me with requests. And of course, I didn't oblige the men too much. I was always obliging the lady students there. And that made me quite popular during lunch and dinner times. So yeah, great times, never to be forgotten. And I think all of us who reach any position in life should not forget where you started out from. I think that connect must always be there, much as you cannot go back there as often as you would like to. But I think that connect is always there. So when I passed out from college, 78, Taj Mansingh in Delhi was opening then, and I was the part of the pre-opening team. I joined as a captain, and my salary was 575 rupees a month. And with tips, I would take home about 1500 rupees. And in 1500 rupees, I lived the life of a king. I think what you live today in probably 75,000 to a lakh of rupees is what I lived in a salary of 575 rupees a month. And I slogged. It was a dog's life. You had no timings, you had no offs, you had nothing. And you always had to keep a smiling face when on the job, irrespective, internally or mentally, whatever you were going through, in front of the guests, you always had to keep a smile. And I must caution all of you in that. That is not everybody's cup of tea. I think it takes a huge toll on us as individuals who are in the hospitality industry, especially when you start and you're in the service line or at the captain and the senior captain levels downline. It takes a huge toll on you. I couldn't survive that, I must admit. So in a year and a half, I left hotels because for me, I found it extremely taxing to give up my own personal life for the sake of others. And I thought I could do better elsewhere. So when I say better, I don't mean it's a bad line. So I'm not trying to discourage all you guys who are saying, hey, what, we're going to be passing out in 2 months. What is this guy talking about? I'm not trying to discourage you. Like I said, I'm here to show you the mirror. It is a very, very taxing industry to be in. So please don't get taken in by the fancy air-conditioned environment you will stay in or work in. Don't get taken in by the suit boot which you will wear all day long. Don't get taken in by the fancy designations which you will get. It's a very tough and challenging industry to be in, and I'll tell you why it is different. Imagine the guest there, once he checks in, he thinks he owns the place. That's the reality of our industry, right? And most of the domestic traveler. Atithi Devo Bhava is taken to an extreme level in our industry where the guest really thinks he is God. And many of us who are on the other side are told, please respect that God. Please respect the Atithi, irrespective of what he does. And that is a challenge which not many can do. So no matter what you're going through, the guest's expectations have to be met. And imagine those expectations change every hour, because every hour you're interacting with different guests who have different expectations, who have different desires of being there. Why has he come there? And every 1 or 2 days there is a checkout and there is a new guest coming in with a new set of expectations. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is something which you must train yourselves to cope with. For me, I think being in the hospitality industry, that really is the biggest challenge which you really have to take. So I left after a year and a half with nothing in hand, but I said, I'll do something else in my life. I will not work in hotels. And then I bummed around for 6 months, not knowing what to do with myself. I thought I'll join the IAS and all that crap. I did nothing. And then finally, I joined Sita Travels as management trainee. And that, I think, was the turning point in my life. That really turned things for me dramatically. And I spent the next 25 years in tourism, out of which 10 years was in Europe, where I lived, like Arindam said, in Frankfurt, in London, in Paris, and for a short time in New York. What made me make this change? So when I was a youngster, the first lesson I probably learned was that you really have to be passionate and believe in what you do. I think as youngsters, all of us are told by our parents and by our colleagues to make compromises. I think that's the last thing you should do. You should be very clear in your thinking, in what you think you will be best at. And I knew at that stage hotels were not for me, never realizing that 30 years down the line, I'll probably come back into hotels. But those are changes which happen in life. So I did that, and then I continued with Sita, and eventually I reached the top, which was Chief Operating Officer of Kyoni Inbound. And I did that for 5 years. And what made me change, what made me start to rethink myself again was when I would come to work every morning, the question I'd ask myself was, what am I going to contribute to my work this morning? And towards the end of my tenure as Chief Operating Officer, I realized I couldn't answer that question anymore. There was nothing more for me to contribute. So my next lesson in life was, and I've stayed with that ever since, that you must get off when you are at the top. Because do remember that downfall happens for everybody. It is the wise guys who have the wisdom to make the move when they think they're doing the best. That is the time you get complacent. And I believe that is the time you should make the shift to whatever else you want to do. So that's when I moved. And I started the Tree of Life after spending 25, 28 years in the industry. I moved and I started the Tree of Life, which is a hotel brand of my own. And the first one I built was in Jaipur. And when I started this, a lot of people told me that I'm going down a very difficult path because I had 7 acres of land and I wanted to do only 13, 14 villas. That is all. And I was outside Jaipur city. I was 15 kilometers outside Jaipur city. So much as people told me, don't do this, it is a wrong project to take, I was convinced that travelers of the future will require space, travelers of the future will require privacy, travelers of the future will require a very personalized service. They will not like to be in 80, 100, 200 room hotels. And that's when the Tree of Life was born. It was a huge struggle, and I will come to entrepreneurship briefly in a later part. But yeah, we started with the first Tree of Life in 2010. Not really worrying about all what I was told to be careful about, because I was just so convinced about myself. And that is what each of you youngsters have to be. Your belief in your own self is the strongest weapon which you can get. And once you can get that weapon, believe me, nobody else can take anything away. So starting from 2010 as one meeting, as one property, we've come up now in 2020 with 8 hotels, and we are growing more. Let's come to your generation. What would you need when you come out? I think the major thing which I find as a negative in this young generation is the instant gratification which you need. You are all looking for instant gratification in everything, be it a relationship, be it a job, be it your future. You want things to move quickly. And I think those things don't move that fast as you want them to. So I really believe each of you who are listening to me, please come out. When you come out into the real world, instant gratification will not happen. More so, you're going to come out into the world which is now struggling to cope with COVID. That makes things even slower. That's going to take even much more time. And we'll touch on COVID as we go along. But let me just pinpoint a few things which you guys need when you come onto the real world. One, like I said earlier, you will need a lot of patience. You must have patience in you. Things don't move at your place. This is no longer home. This is no longer college. This is the real world where each one is out to get the other. That is the reality of the corporate world. So patience is what you really need to show. The second thing which I urge all of you to have is communication skills. And I see this happening ever so often when people think they have the right level of communication skills, they actually don't. And in the hospitality industry, written and spoken communication skills are the absolute important attributes which you need. Because today the world is honestly about communicating with each other. I don't know if you all are still studying French. I'm not aware. In my times, French was there 2 times a week, Mr. Bhattacharya. And I've always wondered, what did that get me to do? Nothing. I spent 3 years trying to learn French. I learned nothing out of it. I just wasted my time. And I always say all these new institutes which are opening up, I wish they would give that much emphasis on English language rather than trying to introduce a half-baked foreign language, which really doesn't help at all. So if you feel and if you find your communication skills, written as well as spoken, are not as good as they should be, please take some time, because that is what is going to help you immensely when you join the industry, especially in hospitality. If you're in the kitchen and stuff like, especially if you're frontline, if you're in the kitchen and stuff like that, at the back end, you still may get away with it. But if you're frontline, you really must have very, very good communication skills. Without wanting to sound sexist or physical appearance in the hospitality industry is very important. There is a review which was done some time back, and they said that in an interview, the person who is interviewing you already forms an opinion about you within the first 10 seconds. 50% of your opinion is already formed in the first 10 seconds of your interacting with the person. That is how important confidence, appearance, and body language is. Our industry is all about body language. So I think you guys who are going to get into mainstream workforce must really look at this aspect also. As you go forward, and while you're at the institute, I know you're taught about front office separately, you're taught about F&B separately, the kitchens part separately, all of that. What's going to happen in future is multitasking. Those are the sort of people who are going to be in more and more demand. And I think COVID is going to accelerate the need for having multitask skills. So much as you will come out and come into one department, I strongly urge you, please, never say no to any opportunity to learn in another department or another field. It will help you going forward, because I see very clearly in the future, multitasking is going to be what you would really need. And cross functionalities, that is what people are going to look at. Also, there is a thought process that resumes are going to be out of fashion very soon. What is really going to happen is people are going to assess you on the basis of your interaction on social media. That is how important social media is going to become. And all you youngsters, I'm sure, are very active on social media, on Facebook and whatever. But I know a lot of my colleagues who actually recruit for hotels and for other places don't give so much of importance to the resume. All they do is go and scan your social media page, because that is what tells character, that is what tells your thought process, it tells more about you. So be active on social media. I think that really is the future. It has its own minuses, but I think you have to be on social media going forward. Your generation is very fortunate to have technology as your closest ally. All of you are very strong in tech, and that is what the future is all about. And that is one thing I do not know again when I look at the institute. How much have they moved from being just books and practicals to technology? How far has the institute moved in technology is the question. And I must admit, I'm not aware of it. If they haven't moved forward as yet, I strongly urge Mr. Pant should actually take some strong steps to moving towards technology and getting the students used and actually using technology while they are there while studying. Because without technology, I don't think anybody has a future today. And technology comes in various forms. So I think in your course, IT and technology must be made a part of the curriculum, because that is what is required and that is what will make you go forward. There's another belief I have, is that we as hoteliers, we actually complicate our own lives ourselves. Because if you see, once you join any hotel chain, they make standing operating procedures which go into hundreds and tens and hundreds of pages. And you are expected to follow that, especially the larger chains. I do believe that the guest doesn't even know or notice half of what we expect our staff to do, actually half. I was talking to a person from Hyatt the other day in Dubai, and they have 230 steps only to do a tea service. 230 steps to do a tea service. Forget everything else. Now imagine, do you really want me to believe that a guest actually realizes all those steps? No. So you who are going to join the major chains will face this challenge, because major chains have this infatuation with SOPs, and I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying Is it required to go to that much of detailing, which is actually eventually never followed by the service staff, and nor does the guest ever realize it? But we as hoteliers just make our lives so complicated. So what is my mandate to my team at the Tree of Life? I have no formal training programs for them, none. We teach them on the job. And my mandate is only one. Do what you want. I want a happy guest going out from my hotel. So I don't tell them how to wish. I don't tell them what to say. And SOPs actually in chains tell you how to wish a guest, what questions you're supposed to ask him, how you're supposed to walk with one hand here, one hand there. These are SOPs. For me, hospitality is about human beings. It is about human interaction. It is not about standardized procedures. The moment you put standardized procedures in there, I think you take away a large part of hospitality. And it's all about body language. So the Tree of Life, I have villagers who stay in the village who've been with me 8-10 years, and you should see the reviews they get. And they're not very highly English spoken people. But you should see the reviews they get from our guests. Why? Because it's the body language which talks. That is what you really have to do. Mr. Pant, do you want me to go into any questions just now? Or are you okay?
Mr. Anand, we can go ahead. The questions will keep on coming. We will announce it to the audience.
Right.
We have 326 people in attendance at the moment. And if I could take this opportunity to invite them to pose their questions in the chat box, and we will be selectively presenting them to you later on during the course of this discussion. So kindly go ahead.
Right. So guys, please, yeah, I'd like you to interact with me towards the end of it. Like I said, this shouldn't be a one-way street. I would like to hear from you. I would love to hear what are the aspirations, what are the thoughts of this younger generation, what are your expectations of life? Because I think many of you will have expectations which are probably not realistic. And I just may able to put some light on what to expect when you come into the real world. Mr. Pant also just informed me that you have a master's happening now, and there's some 50 students in every batch, which is really amazing. Because in our times there was only the 1-year courses, and I think and the 3-year courses. So I'm delighted to learn that now there is a master's happening. Having said that, people often ask me, should I study more? So I'm not going to dishearten you MSc students, please. So don't think this is my objective. I'm just trying to, this is my personal perspective. Education is always good. Education never did anybody no harm. But I'm always a firm believer. I think what the experiences in life which you can get on the job far outstretch the experiences of having another degree. You need to find that balance. Those of you who are doing masters, I would imagine would want to, probably some of you would want to get into education, some of you would want to get into training. I would imagine those are the areas you want to get into. And that is where, yes, you require more education. But all of you who are doing the 3rd year and want to get into operations, I think you should start working as soon as you can, because what you would learn on the job is huge, is immense. And once you've been on the job for some time, then yes, you can go into doing higher studies after that and find that balance, because in the next 3, 4, 5 years of being in the industry, you will then also know where your passion is and where your skills are. And that is what honestly we need. So you need to give yourself those 2, 3, 4 years. Many of you may think, and I'm telling you that will happen. In 2 years, you may find that, okay, hotels is not for me. I probably I'm there to do something better. And all of you passing out should not necessarily look at hotels today. The good thing about this course is it really trains you and attunes you into so many other things, which, let us say, a Bachelor of Arts does not. I mean, a regular BA today, honestly, has in a regular college, BA English, BA History, BA Eco, what value does that have today? So you guys who are coming out from there have some very concrete knowledge, you have some very concrete experiences which can be put to use. So that is where you should do. Let's say the food delivery service industry today, it is huge. And you don't have to look at hotels only. A lot of you will say, I want to go with branded hotels. But do you realize today, the best standalone restaurants are individual standalone restaurants today, 2, 3, 4 hotel restaurants running independently out of the hotel industry. So that is again areas which you need to look at. So don't focus only on hotels. Did you ever realize you guys could be demand in hospitals also? That is the back end. I'm not talking about being in the medical front, but in the back end, people like you are in demand. So don't look at only hotels. Expand your horizons, experiment, play with life for the first 2, 3, 4 years, please. Give yourself that liberty, because that's when you will understand. Do silly things if you have to, experiment if you have to, but what you need to do is take those 2, 3 years, 4 years of your life to find your balance. You will not get balance as soon as you come out from college. Will not happen. You'll be in for some surprises, you'll be in for some shocks, and in 2, 3 years you'll find your balance. So that really is very important. Let's just talk about a little bit COVID and hospitality. Mr. Pant asked me to touch on COVID, and I said yes. There's a lot which has been spoken in the last 5 months. I will just very briefly go on to COVID. All of us who are being gyanis and giving predictions कि ये अभी होगा, ऐसे होगा, वैसे होगा, तब जाएगा, industry को ये होगा, वो होगा, nothing. Nobody knows a damn what is going to happen and when. That is the reality. We are all doing guesswork. So when somebody asks me, can you give me a business projection for next year? I say, no, I can't. Because we do not know. All we know is that COVID is here to stay. All we know is within 1.5 years, things will mostly get normal. We are hoping for that. For the next 1 year, it's going to be a dog's life. I think everything or a lot of things are going to come crashing down. Industry has only started to reopen now. And in the next 3, 4, 5 months, we will feel the impact of it. I don't want to disappoint you. I don't want to discourage you. There is a report floating around that by March of next year, 30% of the Indian hotels will go bankrupt. Now, how far is this true? Nobody knows. So all of you who are passing out now in the 3rd year, you will have challenges. So please mentally be ready to accept those challenges. Don't get disappointed. That is the reality of life. When COVID happened and lockdown was happening, in the 4 months which I sat at home, I just tuned myself to the fact that I've come down to zero. I have lost all I had, and the tree of life now has to start from ground zero again. And this did not come from a position of weakness. कि हाय मैं क्या करूं? मैं बर्बाद हो गया हूं, सब कुछ मेरा लुट गया है. No, it didn't come from a position of weakness. It came from a position of strength, that I am capable of starting my life and my business all over again from zero and move upwards again. And if you can have that confidence and strength in you, that's half the battle already won. Because I know there is so much of moaning and groaning going on in our industry. It surprises me at times. There is just so much of moaning and groaning going around. But that is not the way you are supposed to take life. You are supposed to be able to build yourself over and over and over again. And that is what the challenge of life is all about. So like I said, limited opportunities for the next 12 months. Please don't get disappointed. It will all come back, and it will come back with such a bang that you will have more and more opportunities 2022 onwards. But be ready for 21 to be a very, very tight year for everybody. So whatever opportunity you get when you pass out, please do not say no to it, because opportunities are very limited. Forget that fancy salary bracket of 25, 30, 35, 40,000 I should get when I start. Will not happen. Salaries today are at minus 50%, if you're lucky. That's the reality, right? So 1 year is going to be very difficult for at least the 3rd year students. Please be ready for it. But like I said, I assure you, within 2022, I think it'll all come back, and it'll come back very strong, because India is still a hugely growing market. So that is what one needs to look at. I also firmly believe that we in the hospitality industry have forgotten that we are in hospitality. In the last 5 months, I've seen we people in hospitality have stopped differentiating between hospitality and hospital. So a lot of these major chains came out with so many SOPs of guest safety that they frightened the bloody guests away. Because for 3 months, all they said was, ye karenge, usko spray karenge, isko saaf rakhenge, khana aise aayega, contactless kar denge. And then the guests started wondering, boss, if you guys are doing so much, then there must be something wrong. Otherwise, why would you do so much? So I think we've been, again, like I said, our worst enemies. We should not have gone all that way. The Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Tourism have laid down some very simple guidelines. And we at the Tree of Life just follow those simple guidelines, and our guests are very happy. Let me give you one small example. The whole industry or a majority of the restaurants and hotels are saying we want to go contactless. So let's take a restaurant, right? It's become a fad in every restaurant to tell you to go on the app to see the menu. They are not giving menus anymore, right? Any restaurant you go to, they're saying, sir, please go. This is the app, scan it on the app. Now, my question is, if I as a guest have come to your restaurant to eat, I'm trusting coming to you, one. I'm trusting the table and chair I'm sitting on. I'm trusting the cutlery and crockery you're putting in front of me and the water you're serving me. I'm trusting the service guy who's putting the food in front of me, and I'm trusting your kitchen. But the menu is supposed to be contactless. I mean, how bizarre can this be? I find this absolutely ridiculous. Whatever steps we take must have logic, and that is what I keep telling my industry colleagues. Please don't scare your guest away. So my take on this is, let the guest decide. So you have a regular menu and you have the app also on his mobile. Let him choose what he wants. Because if he's done all this coming to you and he's going through all what I've said, 9 times out of 10, he will actually take the menu, which you've been doing for years. So why are we taking this away? Why are we creating this hawa? Okay, everything has to be contactless. No. You want to make check-in contactless, you don't want to put keys anymore, but you expect him to stay on the bed sheet and use the pillow, the mattress, the towel. All that is okay. But keys now, they are saying will be contactless. You will do a contactless entry into the room. So I'm beyond all of this. I don't subscribe to this at all. And I think we're going to ridiculous levels, because after 1 year or 1.5 years, or whenever, let's say 2 years, when Corona is gone, hospitality has to come back. That smile has to come back. That interaction with guests has to come back. So the smile is hidden behind the mask. It's still there. You can't see the smile, that's all. You can only see the wrinkles of the eyes when I smile behind the mask. But that smile is going to come back. So our industry has been its own worst enemy, honestly, I believe, in creating this huge hawa about safety and about hygiene. We are amongst the most hygienic industries existing today. I mean, go to any hotel. It's spick and span. Go to any decent restaurant. It's cleaner than your own house, probably. So why are we creating this big scare amongst our travelers? It doesn't work that way. Right? So that was that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you, Mr. Anand. Actually, the spirit of hospitality says that the choice is to be given to the guest. The person should be in a position to choose whether he wants a contact service or contactless service. Very rightly said. And during the course of your talk, there are a few curiosities, which you have posed to us. One was regarding the French language, whether it is on offer still or not. We have done away with the French, and the little emphasis is there on the communicative English, not the literature or grammatical part of it so much. And another important point that you touched upon was the use of technology. Well, we are updating our facilities in the kitchens and in the restaurants and in other places. Like we have combi ovens and different programmable equipment in use in the kitchens, keeping our students, abreast with what the industry is using around the world. More in front office practicals and all, it is not register based anymore. It is all computerized property management system. But if we talk about use of technology in the sense that we teach coding to our students and programming and different things, we have not got to that level. But people can make presentations, people can communicate, email, they can create small websites. To that extent, we have gone. But I think we will take more input from you and maybe take it a step forward and try to cover, programming and other things as well.
So, Mr. Pant, this is amazing. No, I don't think you need to get into programming, but I think what I'm hearing from you, that's amazing, is if that's what you've been able to do. And I'm honestly so glad to hear that French is no longer there. Students used to find it such a waste मिस्टर भट्टाचार्य वो पढ़ाते पढ़ाते थक गए हमको, और ना तो रवि ने सीखी फ्रेंच,
जी।
ना मैंने सीखी फ्रेंच, ना किसी और ने कभी काम आई वो.
जी,
So
जी.
I'm
नहीं, नहीं,
glad that
किसी ने
it's
भी नहीं
gone.
सीखी. Right. And I think some of our students, we are fortunate to get students who are from hospitality backgrounds or who have large houses, and maybe they are in a position to create a homestay kind of an environment, 6, 7, 8 lettable rooms. So I would really appreciate if you could share, how the business is there for small hotels. So you are talking in terms of, 15, 16 key properties. So how does it work? How are the top lines and the bottom lines with so few keys?
Right. So I think that's a great question, Mr. Pant. When I started the Tree of Life, one of my non-negotiables was that I would stay small. And when I mean small, I would stay small in the number of keys each of our properties would have. So our smallest in Windsor is 11 keys, and the largest is 18 keys in Banaras. And my Lakshman Rekha is about 22, 24 keys. And since we started, uh, all our properties are small number of keys in 2, 3, 4 acres of land. Some are even 7, for example, like Jaipur. We've never done buffets. And since we were so large in space and less number of rooms, social distancing has become a fad now, but it was at that time also for us a normal thing. Guests had enough space. So for me, when suddenly COVID has happened and everybody's saying social distancing, don't do buffets, less number of rooms, this is what the Tree of Life did 10 years ago. And that's what for us is just being normal actually. Nothing has changed for us. Going forward, it is my belief that properties like these in smaller numbers are the properties which will be in huge demand. That is what COVID has changed the market scenario forever. That is for sure. Whether COVID stays or goes, it has made it has changed that thought process. Is it a very viable number to work on? Yes, it is. Uh, because it's not the big bucks. Quite obviously, if I have 15 rooms and if another hotel has 150 rooms, the turnover there is much larger. But my expenses are more in control. I'm more in control of what my bottom line should be. So if you're in for the big bucks, no, this is not the model for you. If you're in it for actually creating a lifestyle for your guests, for actually doing enough financially for yourself, I think this is a very, very viable project to be in. 6 rooms, 5 rooms, 8 rooms, homestays which are coming, going forward, in my belief, have a huge future. And they have a huge future for one simple reason, that platforms like Booking.com, Airbnb, Expedia, etc., have changed the whole dynamics of business today. The only caution I would request anybody who's wanting to get into this is, don't just create another 6 rooms like the neighbor, because then you'll get jacked. I think everything one does must have one USP. It could be anything. It could be a location, it could be a service style, it could be whatever. So please choose any one or two and only then go there. Don't start a regular 6-8 room one. You don't need travel agents today. You need social media, which is very strong. You have the OTAs, which are very strong. And then you have Airbnb. In fact, I think the hotels today are fearing, the regular hotels are fearing Airbnb today, because I've seen the most amazing accommodations on Airbnb, starting from 4,000 or 3,000 rupees, going up to 8 to 10,000 rupees. So Airbnb is not necessarily a cheap platform. You have people who are selling at 6, 8, 10,000 rupees there also. But let me just tell you one thing about entrepreneurship. And some of you youngsters who are listening to me may have heard this. 7 out of 10 businesses fail. Yeah, that's a given statistic. 7 out of 10 entrepreneurships fail. Not meant to scare you, meant to give you the reality. So only 3 out of 10 will survive. That is what is the reality. I became an entrepreneur after 25, 28 years in the corporate world, right? One thing I went out knowing is that I should be ready if I fail. You should be mentally prepared So I'm not saying you should go there thinking you will fail. You have to go there with full confidence with yourself. Like when I started the Tree of Life, I knew that this has to succeed. That's one part of the story. The other part of the story is, please do be ready to fail and must have a backup plan. I stupidly actually had no backup plan. I just went to Tree of Life and said, Yehi hona hai. My father's a retired army officer, so there's no big money behind me. There was no business house supporting me. So whatever I had saved in my lifetime, I put it in here. Probably don't be as silly as I was. When I look back, I think I took a huge gamble. Maybe the gamble paid off for me. And it paid off for me because I knew I have no alternate and this has to succeed. So there are two ways of looking at it, really. Right? But entrepreneurship is not easy. I think you should probably work for a few years, get a hang of the real life, see what the corporate world is all about, learn, and then probably start your own business after 3, 4, 5 years. I started when I was what, 45, 46? Yeah, probably 47. That's when I became an entrepreneur, when I was 46, 47. And I wish I was younger. I probably could have done so much more with Tree of Life, but I think everything happens in its own good time. So all of you who are there, who are wanting to become entrepreneurs, it is an amazing space to be in, but then be ready that you're the boss, you're the courier guy, you're the service fellow, you are everything together. That fancy suit, boot, coat will go out of the window the day you become an entrepreneur, because it is a dog's life. And at times you will actually cry. I used to cry occasionally when I was building the Tree of Life, and I was 48 years old. I don't have any shame in admitting that. And I kept saying, what the hell have I done with myself? Because there are times of despair where all what you've planned suddenly goes flat. And also, please remember, in business, there are no friends. And I'm giving it in writing. There are no friends in business. So all the buddies who tell you, boss, to shuru kar, hum tere ko support karenge, forget it. It's a bloody bunch of lies and all crap. Nobody supports you. You are on your own at that stage, and I'm talking to you from experience. So I don't hold any grudge against my friends who promised me a lot and did nothing for me. I found my own way, but I'm just telling you, this is the reality of life. Friends don't help you in business, no. Family may, friends don't. Very few will probably, but overall, just think about it. Friends will not help you in business. So please, don't make a business plan depending on friends. You will fall flat on your face. उनसे पैसा वैसा borrow कर लो, वो दूसरी बात है. Business मत उनसे expect करना, वो कुछ नहीं देंगे उनको. Right?
I think there is a constant stream of wisdom flowing this morning. And that brings me to another question, I wish to ask you.
Aji, please, let's go to questions now.
Yeah, it was a wonderful career that you had. You started with hotels and then you went into the travel agencies, large travel houses. Like, do you think it helped you in a certain way? Because marketing for small hotels is the biggest challenge one faces. So you knew the industry, you had friends in the industry. Probably was that something that gave you the courage to put all your, life savings into that property? And would you recommend a strategy like that for the youngsters? Like tourism at your time and at my time, when we were students, you did not have too many tourism management programs around. But now Ministry of Tourism has a institution dedicated to tourism and travel management. Then culinary management and other programs also are there. So would that be, it's kind of backward integration, you sell a hospitality business and then you create a hospitality business, learning as to what people are really looking for. So would you recommend that people take that course in their careers now?
So, Mr. Pant, let me just break one
Myth
which we have, yeah. And the myth is that India is an amazing tourist destination. It is not. It is not. So any of you who are wanting to be associated with tourism going forward, this 10 million tourists which we keep talking about, and I'm talking about inbound tourism basically because I come from the inbound tourism space, and having spent my lifetime there, I still maintain this view. I think India is the most undersold destination. We've reached nowhere in tourism because the Ministry of Tourism keeps talking. And Mr. Pant, I know you got associated with the Ministry of Tourism, but I'm still going to say my piece.
Please do.
personal view which I've been holding for many years.
And please rest assured, I will convey it to the right people. Ministry of
Sir,
Tourism, my
please
bosses are there.
So we say we get 10 million foreign tourists coming into the country. Let's look at small countries: Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, China, okay, Singapore. All these small countries do 25, 30, 35, 40 million tourists. We are 10. And from that 10 million, I'm willing to challenge, actual tourists are not more than 5 million. We in the trade who are in the inbound business, we know it. Right? So India is not really a preferred destination anymore, and we're getting it all wrong because we are not a priority for the government, full stop. And we never will be. That's a given. So please let us accept this fact. And I keep saying, वो कहते हैं ना अपनी औकात अपने को पता होनी चाहिए. And that is, we have to understand, we are not a fancy destination which can get the draws over Thailand, over Singapore and all. That will not happen, right? That's the first. Coming to Mr. Pant's question, it was easier for me since I came from a tourism background to get into hotels, but that was not the driving force for me. I knew 25, probably 30 years ago that one day I will make a small resort for myself, and it was supposed to be only one. And I will try and change what normal hospitality offers. And it was meant to be only that one which I will run myself. That was my plan in life, that I will leave the corporate world. Because please do remember, in the corporate world, all you guys who will come into the world soon, by the time your generation turns 45 or 47, that is your lifespan. 60 or 58 retirement age is only on your appointment letter. If you cannot make it in life by the time you're 45, 47, 48, you are done with it. So my thing always was that when I reach 58, the company is going to give me a nice letter and say, thank you very much. Your service has been great. What will I do with myself next? So I said, I might as well jump the boat earlier and get my life sorted and then carry on till whenever I want to. It's now in my hands, not in the hands of my company. So there were two things which actually drove me to do the Tree of Life, which I did. So that was it. And that one didn't remain one. It became more than one for various reasons. And that brand grew. And I think we will be 11, 12 hotels by next year. But I must say, travel actually helps you. And all of you who are in this business, I even today go and make it a point to stay in other hotels, in other brands, only to learn. I have no reason to actually stay there. But I go and spend the night only to see what can I learn or what can I unlearn. They are both ways. You don't only learn, I think you must also unlearn. So that is what this business is all about. Yeah. Is Mr. Pant there for another question?
Mr. Pant is muted himself.
No, I'm there now.
We take the next
Colonel
question.
Mandla.
Any other
Yes.
questions?
Okay, great. Go ahead,
We are ready to take questions from the students now. And the first person that I'm inviting is Mr. Malhar Mahapatra, who is a final year MSc student. If Malhar is hearing me, could Malhar pose his question to Mr. Anand?
Good morning, everyone. Very good morning, Mr. Anand. It's a pleasure
Morning.
to have you. And thank you for the insightful session. So my question would be, in times of distress like this, you're an entrepreneur, you have a set of employees, and there are people who are in mid or senior managerial levels as well. How does the managerial or the entrepreneurial workforce motivate and train their employees in these times? How do you do it? Because it's very difficult to manage yourself, and motivating and training someone else, it's a tougher job.
Right. Yeah. It's extremely important during these times. So let me just divide this into two. During difficult times, it is impossible to please all employees and all staff members. It is impossible. So we very clearly did go in for salary cuts. We very clearly did go in for leave without pay, which is still carrying on. And I realized that no matter how much I try, I cannot satisfy all my team members. So since we had small properties, just as when lockdown happened, we kept only a skeletal staff of 3 or 4 people at every property. So April, May, June, we were totally shut down till the 15th of June, and the others were sent home. Now, when they were at home, since they were all scattered, it was impossible for us to be in touch with everybody, but occasionally we did do conference calls from our corporate office with 3, 4, 5 of them where we could. But for those 3 months during lockdown, you were actually on your own. So I'm not going to make a big song and dance and say, yeah, we did a lot. Since everybody is very scattered, we didn't know how things are going to go. For 3 months, we could not do anything. What was my biggest priority? My biggest priority was to reopen my hotels so at least people can come back to their lifestyles. And that is what we did. We announced on the 15th of May itself, when lockdown was still happening, that by 15th of June, we will open our hotels. And I think in the country, we were probably amongst the first ones to open our hotels on the 15th of June when everybody was shut. Because unlock started on the 5th of June, and in 10 days, we were able to open 2 of our hotels. So for me, what was important, not what happened during unlock, because that was the crazy time for all of us, during lockdown. For me, what is important is since unlock has started, we are now as quickly as possible getting the teams back to work, because that is what keeps you most motivated. Sitting at home, I can give you all the gyan I want. I cannot motivate you honestly. I can't, much as I would want to. So my objective is, even if I'm can run at a 20% occupancy, and even if out of a team, let's say of 40 people, I can get back 15 to begin with, let me start that process very quickly. So we are now opened already 6 hotels, and 2 are left, which we'll open by October. And yes, that's how we're going about it. Salaries are still not back to normal levels. As and when the business is increasing, we are increasing the salaries. That's all we can afford to do at these times. But yeah, this has been, Malhar, such a crazy time. I mean, who would ever think the world would come to this? Really?
Very true. Very true. The next question will come from Mr. Shanknil Datta, who is a BSc final year student. Shanknil, if you are there, please come forward and ask your question. And I would ask Mr. Sanket Tiwari, a second year BSc student, to be on standby to ask the next question.
Sir, good morning, Mr. Anand, Mr. Ravi,
Morning.
Sir Principal, members of the faculty. Sir, outright, it's an honor to speak. And I like the way you're so unreserved in expressing your opinion. My question to you, sir, is that you've been an employee as well as an entrepreneur. So how have you taken that transition? I mean, what is different? I mean, there's an acceptable level of risk. When you're an employee, you just the concern and care getting your own work done. But then when you're an entrepreneur, you need to be accountable as well. So how is that transition for you? Can you share some anecdote, anything?
So I think irrespective whether you're an employee, whether in the corporate world or you're an entrepreneur, you are actually answerable or accountable for others. Why did I succeed in life? Whether when I was in the corporate world or when I became an entrepreneur, it wasn't me, honestly. It was the team and the people I had. They are today purely responsible for where I have reached. And I am honestly every day ever so thankful to be so fortunate to work with such an amazing set of people in the last 30 years, whether I was in the corporate world or whether I became an entrepreneur, because they were the ones. I was there only to give direction and guidance. That is what my role was. And to show where we can reach as a company. Who created this whole thing? Today, what am I, or what is the Tree of Life without the amazing people I have at each of my properties? Nothing. A company is only a name. That is it. It has, for me, honestly, has zero value. It's only a name. Who makes that name? So when you guys get into the workforce, wherever you are working, you will either make the name of the company or you will break it. Very often, people hold, "Arey yaar, ye achhi company nahi hai." What is achhi company nahi hai? That company is only a name, yeah. It's the people there who make it good or bad. So why do we curse a company's name? I've never understood this. You cannot curse a company's name. That poor thing is static. And it depends on the direction we as the stakeholders take that name to. And that is why you have good companies and you have bad companies. Because in good companies, you have amazing people working there. In bad companies, you've got all the crappy people working there. Companies are the same. They are neutral. So the change from corporate to entrepreneur. I love my corporate world, and at times I must admit I miss it. I miss the business class flights I was entitled to. I miss the company Mercedes I had. I miss that amazing salary I had. I miss the importance I was given because of my position. Again, not because of me. The importance I got was honestly not because of me. I may have got a lot of respect from the people I worked with, but the importance, the position and the chair got. How many people today have the guts not to put their designation on their visiting card? Just put your name. Now give somebody a visiting card with only your name and give somebody a visiting card with your designation. And see and to an unknown person and see the different reactions you'll get. Why? Because company name, designation, these are the ones actually which speak. And for me, I think you've made it in life when you don't need an introduction of your company's name and your designation. For me, that is the true test of an individual, where only your name should count. Not many of us get there. All of us take support of the name of our company or of our designation. So I must admit, I miss all of that and all that bloody foofa I had when I was in the corporate world, because in the tourism business, I was sitting on the #1 chair in the country. And one of the reasons for me to leave was I didn't know where to go next. What would I do? I had nowhere else to go to higher up. And I always had the desire to start Tree of Life. So I said, okay, now I have nowhere more to go. My job is not exciting me anymore. I've been wanting to do this all my life. Let me take the plunge. So one day to the other, I left. And people thought this was the craziest thing I could ever do in a lifetime. But I decided this is what I need to do because my calling was elsewhere. And I had done enough of the corporate world. So when you become an entrepreneur, like I said earlier, you are still answerable for your people. It doesn't absolve you of that. In fact, I think it puts more responsibility on you because in a corporate world, you have a huge infrastructure behind you. I mean, I had 320 people. For every place, I had a department with 20 people under in that department. As an entrepreneur, when I started, it was me. One, just me. And I was building, I was marketing, and then I started running the property on my own with probably 15, 20 people. So that puts immense pressure on you. And that is why many entrepreneurs, I think, crack up also because they can't take that transition from the easy world of corporate to becoming an entrepreneur. So yes, anybody who wants to become an entrepreneur, it's a very exciting life, but please be ready. There are huge pitfalls and not everybody is cut out to becoming an entrepreneur.
I think it is Sanket Tiwari's turn now to ask a question.
I'm Sanket Tiwari and I'm a second student. My question is back in early days when you people were going to give the interview, it was old school. See, you have to pass on the interview and you get the job. So now the things have changed a bit, or is it being shown to us that it is changed? We have to maintain our social media accounts. Like I'm having more than 1,000 LinkedIn connections. So this is the perspective from the guy who is going to join the industry. The other side of table, sir, being an employer, how much importance do you give to these things? Just from the paramount importance of skills, how much does this weigh on a scale that the new employee is having that on LinkedIn, he's that much active on Instagram or everywhere? So how does it be like? Because the social apps are feeding us a lot, they are making a bubble. But sir, what is the real scenario when it comes down to the reality? That's all.
So one of the biggest frauds which happens in the corporate world is the interview. I have lost faith in interviews because in interviews, both sides are putting their best foot forward. And I have seen so many people commit, and I've been through hundreds, if not thousands of interviews in my lifetime. I've seen so many people commit so much to you before joining, and then they fall flat. So if you ask me straight off, my belief in the interview process is very low. I think it's Russian roulette you play. If you're, and I say lucky, if you're lucky enough, you get the right-minded people. And if you're not lucky as an employer, you will get people who will not deliver anything of what they promised you. So that is my clear take on interviews. I honestly do not believe in the institution of interviews anymore. I go more on body language. I don't even see what your qualifications are, honestly. It doesn't matter to me anymore. I go by body language. I go by, I go by body language and by your desire to be a people's person in hospitality. That is what is more important for me. Coming to social media, like I said earlier, the resume you will still have to send, the interview still will happen. But like I told you, more and more people are going towards social media. And if they find that you are very disruptive or if you are very aggressive on social media, which I know many people are, you stand a poor chance to get that job because your social media is being checked. So I'm not saying that you need to go onto social media only to create a profile for yourself. Today, everybody is interested normally in social media. What has happened during COVID, let me give you a very clear example. A lot of people went against their companies and posted all trash on social media. It has happened to me also, right? Tree of Life also went through it. That was a given because they had to take out their frustrations everywhere. Now imagine if as an employer of that person, when you come to me for a job and I'm another hotel, and they just go through your social media where you slammed your previous organization unfairly. Do you think I'll ever employ you? Question doesn't arise. There is no way I will employ you. If you are aggressive and abusive on social media, which many people are, especially aggressive, will I ever take you? I'll think 2 times. That if this guy is this here, is he the right fit for my organization? So not for once am I saying that you have to put up an artificial front on social media. Social media means you're supposed to be who you are, right? But I'm just saying that social media is also a reflection of you, and people are definitely going through that before they offer you a job.
Very good. And I think it is my duty to invite the executive committee members of the PIMA also if they wish to ask any question. And I have got too many questions coming in. Mr. Anand, please do let me know when it is time to bring an end to it.
I'm free, sir. After you. I'm free.
Okay, right. There's another question, which is coming to my mind. Before I take up questions from the students, I would like to ask you, now you have 8 hotels operational and you wish to add another 5 or 6. They must be there in the pipeline. So what is the kind of organization? Is it more like a family-run organization, or have you molded into a corporate setup and like are there opportunities for people to associate with Tree of Life who want to offer franchise arrangements? We would be, interested to learn a little bit about that.
Right. We are a family-owned company. We are not a family-run company. Since I spent my life in the corporate world, I'm a kida for structure, processes, etc., etc., etc. What is even more fortunate is my son Akhil, who now actually runs the business more than I do. I'm more in the background, so we've divided. Akhil does the present and I do the future. And he's all of 30, so he's in a generation, obviously, before mine. He is, like that generation, very high on technology. So even though we are a small company, we are extremely high on technology at all levels. And even on social media, I think we do an amazing job now. So all of that is very in tune. The question for me always is not how many hotels or how fast I should grow. For me, it is whether the person I'm going to associate with is on the same page as I am, and whether the product which I'm getting associated with fits in with the Tree of Life ethos. I could easily have been 20 hotels today. Easily. We don't want to do that. Because I always believe, and I must admit this, when I was running Jaipur personally myself, I know that it had a different way of functioning, because when the owner sits there and the owner does things himself or herself, and that's why the small owner-run properties are so successful, because there is a different feeling there than a structural run hotel. So when I expanded, much as we have managers in every property, much as we have a corporate office with everything there like it should be in Gurgaon, I do feel that there are things we can do better, but because we are growing, you have to give up something. That's the price you pay for expansion. And that's the price I have willingly paid for expanding, where today, I must admit, many things which I wish would happen at the Tree of Life are not happening for the simple reason we have become big. Big in our own way. I mean, 8 is nothing very big, but in our own way of thinking, for me, 8, 10, 12 hotels is a big number, where I started out wanting to do only one. So when your objective was to do one and you end up at 8, 10, 12, you suddenly feel, yes, I'm big. Although there are people who have 30, 40, 50 hotels, but I am in my own space. I have become big in the boutique space. So yeah, that is the price. That is the price one pays. We are very, very choosy who we associate with, and we are happy to go at this pace. So yeah, there is no rush. There is no rush for us.
Thank you. There is a question. I would like to invite Mr. Aryan to ask his question. And after that, I would like Mr. Dhruv Negi to be on standby to ask his question, please. Aryan, are you there? Mr. Dhruv Negi, you may ask your question now.
Good afternoon, sir. I just want to say it's been a pleasure to listen to you today, first of all. And my question is that you did mention that India is not even getting the amount of tourism or the amount of people coming from abroad or travel in India as the other Asian smaller countries. So I want to ask, in your opinion, what are the factors that are making it difficult for us to be able to compete with countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, etc.?
Right. For me, tourism is on its own is actually non-existent. Tourism depends on a lot of other things to make it a good product. So tourism depends on infrastructure. So tourism is not about monuments. That monumental tourism, in my opinion, has gone out of fashion many years ago. And that's actually the unfortunate part. India is still pushing Taj Mahal, Agra Fort, our temples. We are still with monuments. Whereas monumental tourism for me has gone out of the window 5, 7 years ago. It is there, but it can't be your focus. You have to get nature, you have to get other things into experiences, other things into tourism, but that's a very, very different and a long topic. So why haven't we been able to make it is, like I said, tourism depends on society. I'm a very firm believer in that. Look at our society today. Where is it going? Tourism depends on cleanliness. What is the cleanliness of our cities? Tourism depends on me as a tourist being able to go from place A to place B hassle-free. Can we do that in India? No. What is the state of the roads? Are they well enough? No. So tourism is not about just creating monuments and saying we have the Taj Mahal. Those days are gone. So unless India doesn't get all these other things together, it will never have a good tourism product. And that is why I believe that cleanliness will never change in this country. The bureaucracy will never change in this country. We will never be a priority for the government because the government has so many other pressing matters. I mean, in this, when lockdown happened, I don't know if you are aware of this, the whole hospitality industry and the tourism industry was clamoring to the government that please, we're going to go under, please help us do something. And in a press meeting, all the finance minister had to say was, "Theek hai." That is it. So the importance to tourism is not there. This, despite the fact that tourism contributes 10% to, contributed, no longer, but it contributed before COVID, 10% to national employment and 10% to national GDP. This is the highest which any industry does in the country. Despite that, the government does not consider us to be a priority. So that's the reason why I say I honestly have no hope for the inbound tourism. Where I have huge hopes and which has already been happening for many years and is going to happen is the domestic tourism. You've got some 800 million travelers traveling in the country today. That is huge business and that is where the focus is going to be going forward. I think inbound tourism will continue to be, it won't be a farce, but I don't think it's going to give us too much of joy. No.
Thank you, Mr. Anand. I see Colonel Madla attending this webinar along from the executive committee members. Can I have the privilege of inviting Colonel Mandla to pose a question to Mr. Anand?
Uh, no, I wouldn't. Morning, Mr. Pant. I wouldn't place my batchmate and put him into a questionnaire box or something. No, I think he's spoken well, and I think somewhere he's mentioned the word patience for the students. You know, when they go out and they take on the job, and I think that's very important. And the second thing, which I think, which Mr. Himmat will agree, that probably his background from the army, his father being in the forces, his adventure, he wanted to have secluded properties and things like that, and that's paid a lot. And I think he's spoken well for the students to do that. The main thing they say is that man is the person who takes the decision. You know, when he's alone in the restaurant, you may put up 15 SOPs, but he's the one who's to take a decision with the guests. And that's all I want to add. And Mr. Himmat, would you like to take on from here?
Yeah. Mr. Pant, we can't hear you. Can't hear you. No.
No, Mr. Pant is not audible.
No, he's not. Not to me. No.
I think some connectivity problem. Himmat?
Yeah.
I can hear you, Mr. Himmat. I can hear you very clear.
No, can you hear Mr. Pant?
I can hear you a little less. Audibility is a little less. Yeah.
Yeah, technology, sometimes, it plays tricks on me. So I said, it has been a wonderful session, and I would like to give an opportunity to one last student. His name is Rishi Kar. He's also a second year student. So Rishi, if you are there, please pose your question to Mr. Anand.
Good afternoon, sir, and respected faculty members. Thank you for a very informative session, sir. So my question to you is that as someone who has made the switch from a corporate lifestyle to an entrepreneurship, what time or what moment did you decide that is the right time for you to make a drastic change like that in your life? And also, what do you feel is the right moment or something that anyone in life might have to face during their career if they want to make a change to follow their passions or whatnot? What do you feel is the right moment or time to make that change, sir?
So Rishi, there is no right moment. There is no right moment. वो कहते हैं जो लिखी है वही होती है, and that is what I believe in very strongly. I am a very, very strong believer in that. Man plans so many things and not all of them come true. But let me give you some very broad outlines on what you asked. I think you have to go more with gut feel. I'm a very gut feel sort of guy. I always go by my gut feel. I don't go by what people tell me. I listen to them. I don't necessarily go by it. I don't go by reports and by statistics and by Excel sheets and all of that. When I started the Tree of Life Jaipur, people keep asking me very technical questions, all my hotelier friends. Tell me this, tell me that. Have you calculated this? Do you know that? And I said, boss, I don't know anything. I just know कि मेरे को एक resort बनाना है और उसको चलाना है. That is all I know. So, is that the wise thing to do? I think yes. In life, the more you get entangled with what people tell you, I think the more you will jack your life. Because Gyanis are everywhere, and I don't mean it in any disrespect. I think it is always good to have sounding boards, but eventually you have to be your own master, and then also be ready when the axe falls. It should be your neck, because then you can't blame anybody else. I know so many people who take advice, and then when it doesn't work, they start cribbing about everybody in the world. No, you can't. It is your neck, it is your life. So, as a broad game plan, I think when you guys, you're in second year, that's what I understand. When you step out of college, give yourself 3, 4, 5 years, 3 years, 4 years. We're not even 5, I think. Within 2, 3 years at the most, you will know your calling if you're willing to listen to yourself. I can guarantee you that. Give yourself 3 years. Experiment as much as you can. Go with gut feel. Go with things which excite you. A job is not a job if it doesn't excite you, honestly. And why did I leave hotels after 1.5 years? it didn't excite me anymore. I knew this is not for me. I'm wasting my bloody time. Despite the fact I did 3 years hotel management, I worked for a year and a half in the Taj. Who would ever leave the Taj at that stage? And people thought I was nuts. But I just said, this is not what I want to do. Did I ever know that 30 years later I'll come back into hotels? No. So you never know what happens to you in life. I follow my instincts everywhere I go. I make the most bizarre decisions on gut feel. And I have been fortunate enough that things sort of fell place in me. So give yourself 2, 3, 4 years. There is no real age to become an entrepreneur. You could become an entrepreneur at 25 and you could become an entrepreneur at 40. I became one at 45, 46. Was I late? I don't know. I just know I've done well for myself in the last 13 years, relatively speaking, so to say. I've enjoyed what I've done. And I didn't leave the corporate world because still when I was there, I enjoyed every minute of being there. And the day I stopped enjoying my life, I gave up. Because my firm belief, like I said earlier, is give up and you're on top. Your downfall has to happen, boss. Nobody can be on top forever. At least us regular guys. Mr. Ambani and all are a different ball of bargain. But guys like you and me can never be on top forever. So take a jump when you want to. It's your gut feel. और बाकी किस्मत का खेल है, कोई कुछ नहीं कर सकता इसके अंदर.
Very rightly said, Mr. Anand. And this brings us towards the close of today's webinar. I must tell you, Mr. Anand, what a pleasure it has been.
Thank you, sir.
I can see the number of people who are there in attendance, and it has consistently remained, above 300, and that is a very good sign for us. I would like to end by saying that we are looking forward to receiving you in the institute. The institution is not the same anymore. We receive, 305 plus students, in the BSc program, the diploma program, you and I studied long back. We have MSc program, and then we enroll more than 300 students in short duration program. So at the moment, about 1,200 to 1,300 students are there in attendance in the institution. So it's a big institution, and to say the least, we are proud of the achievements our alumni have made, and I think that is the biggest resource that this institution has. We have managed to remain at the top. Many publications, they rank us at the top, including the private institutions which are there in the ecosystem, educational ecosystem in the country. And we wish to stay there, and we bank a great deal on alumnus like yourself to help us stay there. So it is big thank you to you. I don't know, I don't see Arindam. If you are there, Mr. President, you may please come in, and wonderful initiative it is. This is one forum in which IHM Pusa and PIMA, we are working together. And Arindam, if you are there, please take the opportunity to thank Mr. Anand. I couldn't thank him enough.
No, thank you, sir.
And it has been a pure delight. We did not know where the time flew, and we look forward to more interactions from you. Mr. Anand, are you around? I think, yeah.
I think Mr. Arindam is not on the frame.
Okay, so he had to attend to some work at his office also. So on his behalf also, and on behalf of PIMA, the executive committee, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to you. You have added a great deal of value, and I enjoyed every word that you spoke. It was flowing right from your heart, and that therefore it was so valuable to us. And I look forward to more opportunities like this in the future, Mr. Anand. Thank you very much. God bless you and make you stay connected with your alma mater.
Thank you, Mr. Pant, and good luck to all you students. The future is yours. You'll have a great time ahead. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.